A farm dog saved 2 children in the nearby woods. What happened next left everyone amazed. Welcome back to the next story of Animal Dream Story. Subscribe to the channel and start an interesting story right away. Diana's farm lay nestled at the edge of a dense forest, its golden fields glowing under the light of the setting sun. The gentle hum of crickets and the rustling of leaves in the breeze painted a serene picture. But Liam, Diana's loyal border collie, disrupted the calm with his strange behavior. Normally content to rest by the porch after a day of herding chores, Liam was restless. He paced near the wooden fence that separated the farm from the forest, his ears swiveling and his sharp nose twitching as if catching a scent carried on the wind. His low growls rumbled intermittently, and his eyes were still fixed on the dark forest in the distance. "Settle down, boy," Diana called, wiping her hands on her apron after finishing the day's chores. "There's nothing out there." She glanced toward the forest, but saw only the familiar outline of trees swaying gently in the evening breeze. She guessed that it might be a deer or some harmless woodland creature, but Liam's restlessness did not stop. He barked sharply, turning to face her as if urging her to pay attention. Then he darted toward the edge of the property, barking more insistently. Diana sighed, leaning the rake she'd been using against the barn wall. "What's gotten into you?" she muttered. Liam barked again, his body language urgent, pacing back and forth as if pleading with her to follow. She shook her head, grabbing the flashlight from the barn. All right. Let's go see what's so important." The forest loomed ahead as she stepped through the gate, its tall pines casting long shadows in the fading light. Liam dashed ahead, his movements purposeful, his black and white coat a blur against the green undergrowth. The air grew cooler as Diana ventured further, the earthy scent of moss and damp leaves filling her lungs. She clicked on her flashlight, its beam cutting through the encroaching darkness. "Slow down, Liam," she called, tripping slightly on a root that jutted out from the ground. The dog paused briefly, turning back to ensure she was following, before continuing to run forward. Diana's boots crunched on twigs and dry leaves, the sound eerily loud against the muffled quiet of the forest. Shadows danced around her as the flashlight's beam wavered with her movements, and she couldn't help but feel a prickle of unease. The deeper they ventured, the more unsettled she became. The forest, usually familiar and welcoming, seemed different tonight, darker, heavier, as though it was holding its breath. Liam stopped abruptly, his nose pressed to the ground. He sniffed furiously, then lifted his head, letting out a sharp bark before trotting forward again. "Liam, what is it?" Diana asked, her voice tinged with nervousness. Her hand tightened around the flashlight as she quickened her pace to keep up. She noticed the air felt damper here, the underbrush thicker and more tangled. Liam's tail wagged slightly, a sign that he was closing in on something. Suddenly, Liam froze, his body rigid, his ears perked forward. He let out a low whine and looked back at Diana, his gaze intense and expectant. She stepped closer, her flashlight sweeping the ground until it illuminated something that made her heart stop. A damp, battered cardboard box, partially hidden beneath a cluster of bushes. Diana's breath caught in her throat. "What on earth?" she whispered, kneeling beside the box. Liam moved closer, his nose brushing against the edge, his body tense but protective. The faint sound of soft cries reached Diana's ears, sending a chill down her spine. Whatever was in the box, Liam had known it needed help, and he had led her straight to it. "Oh my goodness," Diana whispered, her voice trembling. Her mind raced as she stared at the fragile child, unable to comprehend how someone could abandon a baby here, alone in the woods. Gently, she reached into the box, scooping up the infant and holding it close to her chest. The baby's cries quieted slightly as it felt her warmth. "Who could do this?" she muttered, her eyes darting around the darkened forest, as though the answer might be hiding in the shadows. Liam whined again, nudging Diana's arm with his nose, his amber eyes filled with an uncanny mixture of concern and pride. Diana said softly, stroking his head with her free hand, "Good boy. You're such a good boy." Liam's tail wagged slightly, but his focus remained on the box, as though still attuned to the situation's gravity. Diana wrapped the baby more securely in her coat, shielding her from the chilly night air. She glanced back at the box, noticing faint scribbles on the side. A name, or perhaps a message, obscured by mud and rain. Her flashlight caught the glint of something shiny beside the box, and she reached out with her free hand to pick up a small, tarnished locket. She turned it over, noticing initials engraved on the back, though they were partially worn away. "We need to get you inside," Diana murmured, tightening her grip on the baby. She looked back at Liam, who stood protectively beside her, his ears flicking as though listening for any signs of danger. "Come on, let's go." As she stood, the forest seemed to grow eerily silent. The usual rustling of leaves and distant hoots of owls were replaced by a stillness that sent a shiver down her spine. Liam growled low, his body tense as he scanned the darkness. Diana quickened her pace, clutching the baby tightly and following Liam's lead back toward the farm. The journey back felt longer than it should have, the shadows stretching and the cold seeping through her coat. Liam stayed close, occasionally looking back to ensure she was following. As they emerged from the forest and the warm glow of the farmhouse came into view, Diana let out a shaky breath of relief. But the questions lingered, heavy in her mind. Who had left this baby here? And why? Diana rushed back to the farmhouse, her heart pounding with urgency. Liam stayed close, his sharp eyes darting around as though guarding her and the fragile bundle in her arms. Once inside, Diana placed the baby gently on the kitchen table, quickly wrapping her in a warm quilt. The child's cries subsided slightly, but her tiny body still shivered. Diana scrambled to prepare a makeshift bottle, heating milk on the stove and pouring it into a clean glass bottle fitted with a rubber teat she kept for feeding orphaned lambs. Kneeling beside the baby, Diana fed her carefully, her hands trembling as she supported the small head. The baby sucked hungrily, her frail cries giving way to soft whimpers. "That's it, sweet girl," Diana murmured, her voice steady despite her racing thoughts. Liam sat nearby, his ears twitching and his eyes locked on the baby, as if he understood the gravity of the situation. Once fed, the baby's eyes fluttered shut, and she fell into a deep sleep, her tiny hand clutching the edge of the quilt. Diana's mind raced. She needed help. Fast. Grabbing the phone, she dialed Ernesto, the local sheriff and a family friend. Her words spilled out in a rush, barely coherent, but Ernesto's calm voice cut through her panic. "Stay put, Diana. I'm on my way," he assured her. When Ernesto arrived, his usual easygoing demeanor was replaced with shock and concern. He stepped into the farmhouse, his hat clutched in his hands as he stared at the sleeping baby. "This is unbelievable," he said, running a hand over his face. "A baby abandoned in the woods? If it weren't for Liam?" His gaze shifted to the loyal dog, who stood by the door, his posture alert. That dog deserves a medal. Who knows what would have happened to her if he hadn't found her? Diana retrieved the battered cardboard box from the porch, placing it on the table for Ernesto to examine. The sheriff leaned in, inspecting the mud-streaked surface. He pointed to the faded scribbles on the side. "Looks like someone tried to write something here," he said, his voice grim. "I will ask the coroner to take a closer look." They spent hours piecing together the scant evidence. Ernesto jotted down notes, photographing the box and the locket Diana had found near it. "This locket might be a clue," he mused, holding it up to the light. "It's tarnished, but the initials could mean something." As the clock ticked past midnight, Ernesto stood to leave, his expression troubled. "I'll start an investigation first thing in the morning," he promised, his tone resolute. But whoever did this didn't want to be found. It's going to take time. After Ernesto left, Diana sat by the baby's side, her mind heavy with unanswered questions. Liam remained by the door, his tail swishing occasionally as he stared out into the darkened fields. Despite the warmth of the farmhouse, an eerie tension lingered, as though the night held more secrets yet to reveal. Liam's restlessness didn't wane. He paced near the door, his ears pricking at every sound outside. Diana watched him, her unease growing. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. His response was a soft growl, his gaze fixed on the distant tree line. It was as if he knew their discovery was just the beginning of something far more complex and possibly dangerous. Liam barked sharply, pacing back and forth near the door, his nails scratching against the wooden floor in his agitation. Diana, still reeling from the events earlier, rubbed her tired eyes. "Liam, what is it now?" she murmured, hoping his restlessness would pass. But Liam only grew more insistent, letting out a low, determined growl before barking again. Diana sighed, her exhaustion outweighed by her trust in her loyal companion. Grabbing her flashlight and slipping on her boots, she looked at him with a mix of curiosity and concern. "You've got something else to show me, don't you?" she asked. Liam's tail wagged slightly in response, and he bolted out the door, pausing only to make sure she was following. The night air was colder than before, and the forest loomed darker, its shadows deeper and more menacing. Diana shivered as the crisp wind cut through her jacket. The beam of her flashlight danced over the undergrowth, revealing gnarled roots and glistening patches of damp moss. Liam moved with purpose, his nose to the ground, occasionally glancing back to ensure she was close. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the atmosphere grew heavier. The usual nocturnal sounds of owls and rustling leaves seemed muted, replaced by an eerie stillness. Diana felt a chill that wasn't entirely from the weather. Her grip tightened on the flashlight as Liam led her toward a dense cluster of bushes. The dog stopped abruptly, letting out a soft bark, followed by a low whine. Diana shone her light through the foliage and gasped. There, huddled on the cold, damp ground, was a second child. His small face was smudged with dirt, his wide eyes reflecting the flashlight's beam like two frightened orbs. His clothes were tattered, barely providing any protection against the biting cold. The boy's movements faltered, and he recoiled at the sight of the light. The boy's movements were hesitant, and he backed away from the light. "Shh, it's okay," Diana said gently, lowering her flashlight to avoid startling him further. Her voice was calm and steady, despite the knot of worry tightening in her chest. Liam took the lead, stepping forward slowly. His body language was calm, his tail low but wagging slightly in reassurance. The boy froze, his gaze fixed on the dog. After a tense moment, he reached out with trembling fingers to touch Liam's fur. The contact seemed to ease his fear, and he let out a small, almost inaudible sigh. She extended a hand toward him, moving slowly and deliberately. The boy hesitated, but eventually allowed her to lift him into her arms. His body was tense, his thin frame shivering against her. Diana's flashlight swept the area, revealing a second, smaller cardboard box, partially hidden beneath a layer of fallen leaves. Unlike the first box, this one had been torn and trampled, as though someone, or something, had tried to destroy it. Nearby, faint tracks led deeper into the forest. Diana's unease deepened as she studied them. The impressions were inconsistent, as if someone had carried the box before dropping it, then left hurriedly. "This isn't random," Diana murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She glanced at Liam, who remained alert, his ears swiveling at every sound. The forest seemed to close in around them, its silence heavy with unanswered questions. Cradling the boy closer, Diana turned back toward the farm. "Let's get out of here," she said, her voice firm. Liam led the way, his protective stance reassuring her as they retraced their steps through the shadowy woods. But Diana couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't seen the end of this mystery, and that the forest held secrets she was only beginning to uncover. Back at the farmhouse, Diana worked quickly to care for the boy, her hands gentle as she bathed him in warm water. The dirt washed away to reveal small scars on his arms and legs, some healed, others fresh. Her heart ached at the sight, wondering what hardships had led him to this point. He flinched at sudden movements, his wide eyes darting nervously around the room. Yet, whenever Liam patted closer, the boy relaxed slightly, even reaching out to touch the dog's fur as if seeking reassurance. After the bath, Diana dressed him in one of her nephew's old shirts. She made a warm bowl of soup, his hunger evident as he hesitated only briefly before devouring it. The baby, now rested and fed, stirred in her makeshift crib and let out a soft coo. The boy's head snapped toward the sound, and to Diana's surprise, he crawled over and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. Though they were strangers, the two children instinctively huddled together on the quilt Diana had spread out, finding comfort in each other's presence. Diana sat nearby, her thoughts racing. She couldn't ignore the growing weight of responsibility, but felt a deep resolve to give these children the care they deserved. Liam lay beside them, his body stretched protectively across the floor. The boy occasionally glanced at the dog, a flicker of trust growing in his wary eyes. The next morning, Ernesto returned, his face lined with concern as he examined the second cardboard box and the faint tracks Diana had described. He ran his fingers over the torn edges of the box and muttered, "Whoever abandoned them didn't want them found." Zrania, but not careful enough, Ernesto's words gave her a flicker of hope, but the challenges ahead loomed large. Diana resolved to protect the children, no matter what. She spent the rest of the day transforming her guest room into a cozy nursery. With Ernesto's help, she brought down an old crib from the attic, smoothing fresh blankets over the mattress. She arranged soft toys and books around the room, determined to create a space that felt safe and welcoming. The once quiet farmhouse began to hum with new purpose. The boy, though still skittish, showed signs of curiosity. He cautiously explored the room, his fingers brushing the toys and books. Liam remained his constant shadow, guiding him gently and keeping him calm. The baby, nestled in the crib, gurgled happily whenever the boy approached, their connection deepening with every passing hour. As night fell, Diana sat by the children's side, stroking the boy's hair as he drifted into a fitful sleep. Liam curled up near the crib, his amber eyes watching over them with unwavering vigilance. The farmhouse, which had long been a sanctuary for Diana, now pulsed with the energy of new beginnings. Outside, the forest loomed in quiet mystery, its secrets still unresolved. But within the warm walls of the farmhouse, a fragile sense of hope took root, nurtured by Diana's determination and Liam's unwavering loyalty. For the first time in years, the farm wasn't just a haven for Diana. It was a home filled with life, love, and the promise of a brighter future. As days turned into weeks, the transformation in the children was nothing short of miraculous. The baby, now named Lily by Diana, cooed happily during diaper changes and giggled at the sight of Liam's wagging tail. Her cheeks grew rosy with health, and her tiny fingers often reached out to grasp Diana's hair or Liam's fur. The older child, whom Diana called Sam, began shedding his wild, cautious demeanor. His initial flinches at sudden movements gave way to curiosity, and his once guarded expression softened. Sam followed Diana around the farm, helping her with small chores like feeding the chickens or watering plants. One afternoon, Diana found Sam sitting cross-legged in the yard, studying a book she'd left on the porch. Though he struggled with the words, he traced the pictures with his fingers, his brow furrowed in focus. Encouraged, Diana began reading to him each night before bed, her soothing voice helping him fall asleep. Liam often lay at Sam's feet, a silent guardian who never strayed far from the children. Diana, unprepared for motherhood but guided by her boundless compassion, embraced her new role wholeheartedly. She repurposed an old rocking chair for Lily's nursery and hung wind chimes outside the window to soothe her during naps. The community, inspired by her selflessness, rallied around her. Neighbors dropped off supplies, clothes, toys, and jars of homemade baby food, turning the farmhouse into a hub of support and warmth. The local teacher offered free tutoring sessions for Sam, while others helped repair the barn and fence. Liam's heroic discovery became the talk of the town, earning him the title of the Miracle Dog. The story spread beyond the community, drawing reporters eager to share the tale of his extraordinary instincts. Journalists photographed Liam with Lily and Sam, their bond evident in every frame. Letters of admiration poured in, some from as far away as neighboring states, commending Diana and Liam for their courage and compassion. Despite the attention, Diana's focus remained on the children. She taught Sam to bake bread, his laughter bubbling up when flour dusted his nose. Lily learned to crawl, often chasing Liam's wagging tail across the kitchen floor. The once quiet farmhouse now echoed with joy and laughter, the rooms filled with a warmth that hadn't been there before. One evening, as the children played on a quilt spread across the living room floor, Diana watched with a mixture of gratitude and awe. Sam built a small tower of wooden blocks, carefully stacking them as Lily clapped her hands in delight. Liam lay nearby, his eyes half closed, but his ears twitching at the sound of their giggles. Diana reflected on how much had changed since that fateful night. Her farm, once a solitary place of quiet routines, had transformed into a sanctuary brimming with life and purpose. It wasn't just a home anymore. It was a haven, a place where love, safety, and second chances thrived. In the end, Diana realized that none of it would have been possible without Liam. The loyal dog had followed his instincts, saving 2 innocent lives and reshaping hers in the process. As she stroked Liam's fur that evening, her heart swelled with gratitude. The bond between them had deepened in ways she couldn't have imagined, and she knew that his unwavering presence would always guide her. Liam, as if sensing her thoughts, lifted his head and nuzzled her hand. Diana smiled, her eyes misty, but filled with hope. The journey they had embarked on together was just beginning, and with Liam by her side, she felt ready for whatever lay ahead. After watching this story, I would love for you to rate it from 0 to 10 in the comments section and let me know where in the world you are listening to this story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can bring you meaningful stories.